The painstaking process of immunizing people in a vaccine desert. Colorado has a few of them. We're seeing some real sustained momentum as this state gets its COVID-19 numbers under control. They're reimagining how policing will work without police in the room, because they left. A face from Next pops up alongside a star in the inauguration night concert. And remembering the man who made Telluride. Next. The challenge of getting COVID-19 vaccines to some Coloradans goes beyond the supply of shots. There's a series of barriers that stack up, both in rural Colorado and in parts of the metro area, and it's led to what are being called vaccine deserts. Our Anusha Roy found that the solution is complicated, and sometimes it's as tedious as reaching out to one person at a time.
The State Department of Health said we want to make sure that in the haste of getting vaccines out, we don't unintentionally create barriers to access. A vaccine desert has a lot of layers to it: geography, demographics, income, transportation, language barriers, to name a few. It all boils down to a lack of access in underserved communities.
So it results in very low appointment possibility or potential.
MSU Denver professor Cheryl Zadowicz said that this can play out in rural and urban areas. So what's the answer to a complicated problem? Here's one way SEL Health is working to reach people 70 and older, minorities, and underserved communities.
We are going to be hosting an event at the beginning of February, and our goal is to vaccinate 5,000 folks in our community. And we are going to be hosting this at the National Western Complex.
They picked the location for a reason.
And we picked the National Western Complex because of the surrounding neighborhoods that it serves.
SEL Health is working with nonprofits, community leaders, and faith organizations to reach the right people for this event, even signing them up one at a time.
Is Park County considered a vaccine desert?
Yes, that's our understanding.
This is a community Ben Wiederholt with Stride Community Health Center said is facing a lot of barriers, like enough providers, transportation, and socioeconomic factors.
Internet access.
So Stride, which has been hosting vaccine clinics, is planning to hold one specifically in Park County for those 70 and older early next month, prioritizing their patients and county residents.
With today, there not being a provider that's offering large-scale vaccinations, this really fills that gap.
So to be clear, that SEL Health event that I was talking about, this isn't something that anyone 70 and older can go sign up for. They're being very specific with who they're reaching out to make sure that they have a chance to be registered for this event. There are so many limitations here, right? I'm literally talking about this one event at a time. The State Department of Health working with other health systems to figure out similar clinics, all of that in the process. And Kyle, all of this is happening as all of these health systems are still working to vaccinate and reach out to people who are 70 and older in general outside of these events.
Every time people see these one-off events, they just want to know, is there going to be another one? Is there going to be a regular schedule that people can try to get in on?
Yeah, and the health systems I talked to said they'd love to be able to say that, but right now they can't predict the future. So much of what their future plans are going to be is going to hinge on the pace of vaccines that are coming into Colorado, but also the bandwidth of the staff and what they can handle.
All right, Anusha Roy reporting. Thank you very much, Anusha. So our pace of progress on vaccinations is measured in the tenths of percentage point per day in Colorado right now. We're up to 5.4% vaccinated at this point. Another 16,000 some people yesterday. We've passed 300,000 people vaccinated in total. After a quick one-day rise, Colorado's COVID-19 hospitalizations dropped again yesterday. 712 people are currently in the hospital being treated for the virus, down 32 from the previous day. Our daily average case counts are falling. Colorado added 1,759 new cases of COVID yesterday. Weekly average of just under 1,600 cases per day. Haven't been that low since the end of October. And you really got to like what we're seeing in terms of the positivity rate. The percentage of tests coming back positive is under 5% yesterday. Our weekly average is just over 5%, level that public health experts say is when the disease is manageable. There's a community group responsible for reimagining law enforcement in Denver. They will now have to just imagine that police are working with them to come up with these ideas, because the law enforcement officers have left the group. Our Marshall Zellinger can't imagine how that's going to work out well.
Hi, welcome to the Reimagined Policing Task Force members.
It's a weekly meeting on Thursdays. A community group to reimagine policing in Denver is now meeting without Denver police input.
The main reason for that is because I was told multiple times from my staff that they were asked to not speak unless spoken to.
Denver Public Safety Manager Murphy Robinson backed out public safety representatives from the community group that was created in September following the unrest in downtown this summer. By March, the task force is supposed to come up with recommendations on how Denver Police and the Denver Sheriff's Department interact with the public.
We ask law enforcement to be a part of this conversation, to be advisors, as well as to be content experts.
Dr. Robert Davis is one of the group's leaders.
Does providing advice and being content experts mean they can't give their own opinions?
No, that's what an advisor does. An advisor says, this is what I believe is the best approach based on these facts. So that doesn't mean be quiet, step back, don't say anything. What it means is be intentional and be conscientious.
This is from a task force member told me that if you were not of one opinion, which is to abolish the police or to completely get rid of an abolitionist behavior, then you didn't have a voice on that committee.
I am so proud of how diverse this task force is.
The start of tonight's meeting addressed the issue of law enforcement backing out. I wondered if that will impact how their recommendations will be received by the city.
I doubt that City Council would appoint individuals to be on the task force. The task force then comes with a series of recommendations, and then they say, no, we don't want to listen to the recommendations from the people that we assign to the task force.
I hope this group comes up with some really good feedback and some really good initiatives, and I hope that we can implement some of them. I really do.
One of the concerns from the safety manager was the lack of business owners and neighborhood organizations in the task force, which was selected this summer after a survey and some town hall meetings. Dr. Davis tells me the task force has heard from people representing 40-plus organizations and that he individually does not have a say of who can and can't be on this task force. Kyle, at some point we're going to be talking about the actions from the task force and not the actions of the task force.
Yeah, I mean, Marshall, do you get the sense that the task force has any kind of real teeth, though? You know, I mean, is this just one of those things where a bunch of people talk and then they send in a paper and somebody says, hey, nice job, and that's the end of it? Or is it really going to move the needle, perhaps?
It's recommendations. This is almost like the conversation we always had about the independent monitor that oversaw Denver Police and the Denver Sheriff's Department, but they had no power. He could just give recommendations. Again, you have this community group that says, here's what we would like to see, and then it's really up to City Council to vote yes or no at the end.
All right. Marshall, I apologize for talking over you. I've got an earpiece that's just dog excrement tonight, and I'm having a really tough time hearing you. All right. Thank you, sir. You know, perhaps we envision Colorado's pioneers as being from the Wild West days. There are men and women who walk among us after carving out some of this state's most recognizable places. I'd say that makes them pioneers. Telluride lost one such man quite recently, Senior Mahoney. How did Telluride go from a mining town on the way to oblivion to a world-class ski destination? Well, there was a man. Locals called him Senior Mahoney. He grew up around there, worked the mines starting as a young man, and he, perhaps more than anyone else, saw what Telluride could become. So he convinced and cajoled people to turn his remote town into a skiing mecca. He brought in the experts, helped obtain the land, cleared the trees, laid out the runs. His hands helped build what his mind imagined Telluride could be. When Senior Mahoney passed away last week at the age of 92, a local newspaper wrote, if there were a single person whose being captured the essence of Telluride, it would be William Senior Mahoney. Colorado's pioneers aren't all long gone. We lost one just last week, but we still have his life's work. Telluride. Hey, she looks familiar.
We're breaking and no one is listening.
From your living room on Next to America's living rooms on Inauguration Night. And man, talk about talent. Coloradans who compose words for a living tell us what we witnessed on that stage. Next.
A mix of clouds and sunshine today, but these clouds were cool. Lenticulars spotted up and down the Front Range today. The winds aloft were gusty, but not here at the surface. A little bit cooler. Our high today, 49. You'll recall yesterday we were close to 60. Not a bad day. And we've got another storm on the way and a chance for more mountain snow with a winter weather advisory that'll go out tomorrow night. Denver and the Front Range won't see much snow with the storm Friday into Saturday, but it'll be cloudy and cooler heading into the weekend. So tonight, partly cloudy, light winds, low 21. Tomorrow, a mix of clouds and sunshine, a little more sun than we had today with highs near 50. 20% chance of snow showers on Saturday. Dry and cool Sunday. Monday looks nice. Another storm, another chance for snow on Tuesday, and then a slow warming trend heading into the second half of next week.
Did you see her? Last night during the inauguration concert. Did you see our close personal friend here on Next? It was Emily Wortham. She's singing along with Demi Lovato and other healthcare workers from around the country. We know her. We shared her story on Next back in December. She's a nurse at UC Health Highlands Ranch. Wrote a song to paint a picture of what life is like in the ICU during the COVID-19 pandemic. The team organizing the inauguration celebration saw our story on Next, liked her voice, asked her to be part of the event.
You know, the original story was about that song I wrote about COVID, and I didn't really expect much to come of it. I just had originally put it on my Facebook page, and then I was able to do the story with 9 News, and then of course it led to the inauguration. So it's just been a surreal, wild experience to see it go from just something I did, you know, in my living room to something that people can recognize me from. I never thought it would get like that.
From her living room to your living room to the world. She recorded 3 versions of her singing Lovely Day. She did 2 at the hospital, 1 at Red Rocks. And she had to keep this a secret from most people other than like some close friends and family until last night. Sadly, she did not actually get to meet Demi Lovato. She said she's kind of bummed about that. But all in all, she said it's still a pretty big honor.
I was just really, really honored and blessed by the power that was in her voice.
When Amanda Gorman spoke, I stood up. I mean, it seemed like the respectful thing to do. It turns out that even Colorado's most creative wordsmiths were equally impressed.
Thank God that so many people are seeing poetry in this new way for the first time.
The power of words from people who know them well. Next. No matter what you do for a living, you know, every once in a while you see somebody else do the thing that you do, only obviously better, like when Anusha anchors this program when I'm off, and you're just like, wow, that is really impressive. That person has some crazy talent. And that is what we heard from poets in Colorado who saw 22-year-old Amanda Gorman capture America's attention and heart at this week's inauguration. Even other poets were awestruck.
When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade?
I was just really, really blessed by the power that was in her voice.
Braved the belly of the beast.
Thank God that so many people are seeing poetry in this new way for the first time.
Sense of what just is.
So many notes of her poem struck a heart in the American people.
Hi, I'm Ayla Sungti Sullivan, and I was Denver's 2nd Youth Poet Laureate.
My name is Toluwanimi Obiwole. I'm a multidisciplinary artist. I was also Denver's 1st Youth Poet Laureate.
My name is Jovan Mays, and I am a student engagement advocate for Aurora Public Schools. I love poetry and all things poetry. Do y'all remember yesterday when we were talking about that poem by Amanda Gorman. Yesterday morning when I woke up, I had an entirely different lesson plan until I was blown away at the inauguration by Amanda Gorman's poem.
I felt really proud in a way. I was really, really happy and just rooting for her the entire time.
And there's also something very powerful that Amanda is asking us to be brave in this moment.
I, as a poet, could watch that and know that all of a sudden the world is going to have a greater response back to our community.
I remember, being a young poet and not seeing people who looked like me in that role. And so I'm really excited for every young Black poet, every young Black girl that she is inspiring, that they can do whatever it is that they want.
If only we're brave enough to be it.
Reflections on Genius through the lens of our photojournalist Corky Scholl. Coloradans going to great length out of love for their pets. That is not new, but even we look twice on this one. That and your feedback next. The most Colorado thing we saw today is a first-class ride to the dog park. When you become dog grandparents, you fully embrace it if the grandkids haven't come along. Peter's got his daughter's dog, Thor, strapped to his chest as they ride out to Chatfield Dog Park. The Thor holster was a Christmas present. Was it for Peter or was it for Thor? Unclear. Probably both. Send us the most Colorado things you see. Email us a photo or video to next@9news.com or use the hashtag HeyNext. Feedback coming in tonight from the fine folks down in the Branson School District, down on the Colorado state line. Our Word of Thanks project this week is raising money so they can put in a football field. And Brad, their athletic director, sent me a note to say, I have to admit, when you told me that the giving was like a tidal wave, I had a hard time believing it. And then in all caps he wrote, "Holy tsunami, Batman." You all have raised $64,000 to help them put in that community gathering place in football field down in Branson, Colorado. That's pretty wild. Jeff writes in, I have been watching this garbage show for 4.5 years. 2, maybe 3 more is all I've got in the tank. And that could be the single best piece of viewer feedback we have ever had on this program. Linda writes in to say that our new logo sucks and that she doesn't like the new music either. Linda emailed, now I feel like I am headed into a laxative commercial. Linda, I'm not sure that you being more regular is the worst thing in the world. Maybe we just embrace it. See you next time.